Have you ever thought about the power of social media? Social media has the power to make your business grow. Grow! Yeah. Why don't you let us manage your social media? Because our business is to see your business grow. Visit us at www.bstownmedia.co.za.
So thank you very much for having me. I just presented on the social mission work that we've been driving in Africa for Unilever. I think Unilever indeed has been leading the way with the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan that we have in place that says that we could actually double the business whilst reducing our environmental impact and improving our social impact as well. And some of the examples that I've shared today were brands that I have in Africa that have had most impact, especially on hygiene and nutrition. So if you look at hygiene, so diarrheal disease is still one of the causes where most kids under 5 still die in Africa. And if you look at hand washing with soap, you know that you could reduce diarrheal disease significantly and respiratory infections by hand washing with soap. So with our Lifebuoy brand, we've been running a program to reach over 400 million people across the world, and our objective is to get to 1 billion by 2020. Now, we've done programs and partnerships with government, partnerships with NGOs, partnerships with where we could actually be as well, and that's been absolutely fascinating for us. Another big interesting example for us is the example that we are driving, for example, with nutrition. So how do you get savory and the nutrition brands such as Knorr to be able to influence everyday diets to make sure that you could get people to eat more iron-rich food and add more greens, for example, in their diets. We've been doing quite a lot of work as well with toothbrush and toothpaste to get kids to brush their teeth twice a day, so that you can reduce oral health cavities. So I think the role of the brands is to be able to give right messages at the right time and integrate that into their marketing strategies so that it could make a huge difference in public health in Africa, for example. A couple of learnings that I've had is I believe very much that, one, you need to be clear in terms of what change you want to drive and what behavior change you want to drive. What is the right partnerships that one needs to drive? And then what is the right measurements that one needs to put in place? And then what is the right advocacy that one needs to be able to talk about? So you distinguish very clearly between what the brand do and what the brand say is. To be honest, one of the best examples that we have is mainly driven because we also have the right products to be able to influence. So I think that's where the shared value makes a huge difference. It's going back to the DNA of the creation of the company and to say the company was actually created, for example, with soap, the Sunlight brand, to be able to lessen the burden of women, and giving them a way to be able to wash their clothes that's easier, faster, or during cholera outbreak in Victorian England, to create the Lifebuoy brand so that we can contribute to improving hygiene. So I think that those are the two elements that we kept going and that kept us thinking that the product still needs to become at the center. So the product, the innovation, and the program that you need to do. But today, in a world where we're talking about SDGs and what kind of partnership we want to create, how do you make the best partnership that give you the scale and the impact to make sure that those happens? I think the kind of impact we're talking about is if you can get more people brushing their teeth, if you can get more people washing their hands, then the consequences of that is a reduction on diseases. But I think, as a private sector company, we can only be clear that what we can do is show that we can drive change. Because when you can drive change, then you get to the point that you can make a difference. And I think that's absolutely clear. That's a little bit where I think we need to make sure that we differentiate, because our mandate is not saving lives. Our mandate is to help children reach 5, and then in a very small contribution, which could be a bar of soap, for example, but still very meaningful, and there's a very clear way in which you can make that happen.
South Africa, because of its history, tends to have a huge deficiency of institutional trust. And on anything you go into that's unknown, you need to trust those that you're going with to figure it out along the way. The things that can build trust are often two things I've found in both business partnerships and investor relationships, is shared values and shared work ethic. So shared values mean that even though it's unknown, you're probably going roughly in the same direction because you care about the same things and you see the world in similar ways. And then work ethic just means that you're pushing to get there just as hard. Well, look, the truth is whether someone wants to fail wants to avoid failure or not, they're gonna fail. Fail is a natural part of trying anything new, and it's a natural part of investing. If everyone was perfect and invested in things that only ever worked, you'd have no failures ever. And even those things that work elsewhere that you want to transpose into a South African environment don't always work either, because you're changing some underlying variables, or it's maybe someone new running an old thing, and the cocktail's never quite the same. But I'll say this about the investor mindset and the entrepreneurial mindset about being afraid of failure, is that you often learn the most from a tough loss than you do from an easy win. And so it's important to play hard and be okay with losing, as long as you had the right intention in playing the game and you played your heart out. There's not much more than you can try to do. And I will say this about one thing living here. I'll be in South Africa 6 years next week. And one thing I've observed over the years as a really frustrating thing about the South African psyche is an expectation to sometimes lose. And I can best describe it if you've ever been with South Africans watching the Springboks play. Okay? They just listen. Actually, if you just stop watching the game and you just listen, all you hear is, it's about, I was waiting for him to make that mistake, or, he's going to miss that kick, or, what a lazy penalty. It was only a matter of time. So you have in the country and in the economy, I would argue, and this manifests in the Springboks, but that's just a random example, you have a tendency to play not to lose instead of playing to win. And that might just sound like semantics. But it's so fundamental into mindset and confidence. And when you step onto the pitch playing to win, you're going to take that extra half step. You're going to move that extra little bit quicker with more confidence. And the same is true in business. When you play not to lose, you often just fulfill that outcome. Our business is one predicated on share value. But the OA2 project has been around since 2009. We started with a very, very simple mission: to use entrepreneurship to reduce inequality, and a vision to build a society that Madiba would be proud of. And so we sometimes counterintuitively use business principles and venture capital and private equity investing to actually reduce inequality, which sounds weird because typically people invest to often exacerbate inequality and make holders of capital more rich. But we try to flip that on its head, because the principles of seeking profit are very powerful motivators of human behavior. And so we've been doing that for nine years now. And we have two big businesses. One is a micro enterprise incubator that helps informal entrepreneurs start and scale their small businesses. And then the other is a micro private equity fund manager and supply chain transformation fund manager that helps young black professionals buy into high-performing and typically white-owned small businesses in corporate supply chains, and helps them over time take those over and scale them. One idea that's resonated with me and that I try to keep in mind always in my own work is that of time. Think in decades, not quarters. Exactly. I think a lot of short-termism leads to very, very suboptimal decisions for society and the environment. And when you start to open up the horizon and think in longer term, you start thinking about what are your grandkids going to be working on or doing, you'll make fundamentally different decisions. And I think that that's a foundational element of this whole summit.
For more stories like these, go to www.social-tv.co.za, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on our social mediums.